道统、公议与成宪，中国古典政治秩序的历史善变。道统，公共话语与既定宪法，中国古典政治秩序的历史演变。大宪章传统映照下的中西权力秩序审查 ，A reflection on Chinese and Western power orders in light of the Magna Carta tradition。第一编上古与中古，宪制萌芽与惯例约束的生辰商道堂。Part 1 Antiquity to the Medieval Era. The emergence of constitutional beginnings and customary restraints Shang Tang. 第一章，神权与王权的博弈，商代真人，政治与西周共和，分闪传统。Chapter E, The struggle between theocratic and royal power, diviner politics in the Shang dynasty, and the Western Zhou traditions of Gonghe governance and Fenshan partition. 第一节，商代真人集团的制衡权与武丁收权的历史转向。Section E, The Shang dynasty, the checks of the diviner group and the historical shift of power centralization under King Wuding. The core pillar of Shang politics was the belief in spirits, ancestors, and divination. All major state decisions, military campaigns, sacrifices, royal succession, capital relocation, responses to disasters, hunting, and royal tours were decided through oracle bone divination. The group that controlled divination, inscription, interpretation of heavenly mandates, and judgments of auspice and inauspice was the diviner clan Zenred. In the early and middle Shang, the diviners were not mere tools of the king, but independent political actors with their own will and public voice, capable of openly opposing royal commands. Many surviving oracle inscriptions record conflicts such as the diviner prognosticates disapproval, yet the king insists on acting, or the diviner finds it auspicious. The king finds it inauspicious, clearly showing an early political order where theocratic and royal authority coexisted, balanced each other, and frequently clashed. Royal power at this stage was far from absolute despotism. It was a limited power constrained by religious authority, aristocratic consensus, and ancestral piety. As spokespersons of the heavenly mandate, the diviners formed the most robust external check on the monarchy before King Wuding. Most diviners were royal kin and aristocratic elders who controlled divination and interpretation. No major state action was taken without divination, and the king often had to defer to their judgments, rarely defying divine will openly. This structure gave the diviner group strong decision-making leverage over royal power. Early inscriptions often prioritized diviners' judgments over the king's own. Even with personal preferences, the king usually submitted to the results of divination, giving theocracy the appearance of supremacy over secular kingship in ritual and political procedure. The diviners were not purely religious figures. They were the core of aristocratic politics, using the mantle of theocracy to impose institutional checks on royal power, an early form of power balancing in ancient China. Yet diviners lacked independent administrative and military authority, intervening only through procedural divination. The king always retained final decision-making power. Any claim that diviners superseded the king refers only to procedural constraint, not substantive dominance. THIS balance of theocracy and kingship underwent a fundamental, irreversible shift under King Wuding. With great ambition and political consolidation, Wuding gradually absorbed the right to divine, interpret omens, and define the heavenly mandate into his own person. Diviners were reduced to ritual performers and scribes, and theocracy became fully subordinate to royal power, no longer capable of independent checks. Wuding's centralization ended the dual structure of theocratic and royal authority in the early Shang, inaugurating a long historical path in Chinese politics. Royal power concentrating upward, while supernatural authority entirely served secular kingship. This shift laid the basic tone of Chinese politics for the next 3 millennia and left a persistent core question. Once supreme single power loses external rigid constraints, HOW can institutions, customs, morality, and public forces prevent it from descending into arbitrariness, tyranny, and chaos? 第二节，周初变革，选贤继统，管叔先与五根之乱的制度决战。Section R, Transformations in the early Zhou, meritocratic succession, Guan Shuxian, and the institutional showdown of the Wu Gang Rebellion. The Zhou conquest of the Shang brought the first structural, foundational revolution in Chinese political civilization. ITS depth and scope were defined by Wang Guowei in On the Yin and Zhou. Institutions as no political or cultural change in China was more drastic than that between Yin and Zhou. Wang's core thesis cut to institutional reality. Yin followed kinship nearness, Zhou followed hierarchical reverence. Shang succession was governed absolutely by blood ties, seniority, and fraternal inheritance. Power was treated as family property with a closed line of succession. The Zhou completely broke this logic, establishing reverence for hierarchy and merit as the supreme principle, prioritizing virtue, merit, prestige, and public recognition of the realm as the basis of legitimate rule, creating one of the earliest and most mature traditions of meritocratic governance in Chinese history. Zhou royal selection favored virtue over age, transcending rigid blood seniority, and grounded political legitimacy in virtue and public acceptance, a crucial step in the rationalization of early Chinese politics. The core of early Zhou succession was to place morality and competence above kinship, building a more stable political order and fundamentally revising the Shang's purely hereditary system. Among King Wen's 10 sons by his main wife, the eldest Bo Yukao did not inherit. The second son, Jifa King Wu, ascended because of virtue, courage, and ability to unify the realm, eventually completing the conquest of Shang. When King Wu died, King Cheng was still young. B. Why pure blood seniority? The third son, Guan Shuxian, had the strongest claim to regency. Yet power was entrusted to the fourth son, the Duke of Zhou, for one decisive reason. His virtue, talent, and prestige surpassed all other brothers, making him the only one capable of stabilizing the realm, governing as regent, and preserving the new dynasty. This arrangement openly violated primogeniture and represents the most dancing and profound expression of the Zhou principle of choosing the worthy, not the eldest. It directly triggered fierce resistance from the old hereditary order. Claiming priority by seniority of birth, Guan Shuxian refused to recognize the Duke of Zhou's regency, spreading rumors that the Duke of Zhou will endanger the young king. He allied with Kai Shudu, Huo Shuchu, and incited Wu Geng, son of the last Shang king, to lead a large-scale rebellion of Shang remnants known as the Rebellion of the Three Guards and Wu Geng. This conflict was no mere succession, struggle, or court intrigue. It was an institutional showdown between the old tradition of blood inheritance and the new order of meritocracy, a direct clash between two political ethics, two sources of legitimacy, and two rules of succession. The Duke of Zhou campaigned eastward for 3 years, finally suppressing the revolt, executing Guan Shu and Wu Geng, exiling Kai Shu and deposing Hu Shu. With both military force and moral authority, he firmly consolidated the core Zhou principle. Power belongs not merely by blood, but by fitness to govern, stability of the state, and acceptance by the realm. The Duke of Zhou's victory defended meritocratic succession, rejected the absolute legitimacy of pure blood seniority, and established the fundamental principle that political power serves the public good of all under heaven. 第三节，共和行政，分散而治与国人议政，上古宪权的制度原型。Section 3, 公给 Regency, 分身 Partition, and Public Deliberation. Institutional archetypes of ancient power restraint. The DNA of power restraint in Zhou politics extended far beyond succession principles. It appeared in early mature forms: public participation, shared rule, and popular oversight. In the late Western Zhou, King Li was tyrannical. He monopolized mountains and marshes, deprived people of their livelihoods, and used informers to suppress speech, brutally punishing public criticism. This sparked a massive uprising of the Goran state people. The people of the state were not the lower commoners of later times, but a community of aristocrats, commoners, artisans, and freeholders residing in the capital who held land, served in the military, paid taxes, and possessed real political voice, including the right to debate, intervene, and even depose kings. After the uprising, King Li was expelled and fled to Ji. With the throne vacant, the court was administered jointly by the Dukes of Zhou and Shao, known as the Gongai Regency, 841 BCE. THIS marks the first recorded instance in Chinese history where collective popular action restrained royal power, an aristocratic group ruled jointly, and supreme authority was exercised through collective governance. The Western Zhou Goren possessed stable rights of political participation and oversight. They were not passive subjects, but core members of the political community. The Gongai Regency was the culmination of this tradition. The uprising and regency proved that Western Zhou kingship was consistently constrained by the aristocratic and popular community, far from the absolute despotism of later ages. Meanwhile, the Dukes of Zhou and Shao established the core political structure of Fenshen Erzi, governing by partition of Shen, The realm was divided west and east of the Shen Plain, with the Duke of Shao governing the west and the Duke of Shou governing the east. The two aristocratic houses ruled separately, supervised one another, assisted the king together, and shared supreme authority.